It's springtime in the Rockies. I'm coming back to you, little sweetheart of the mountains, with your bonny eyes of blue. Once again I'll say I love you.
Oh, babies, they're in the sunshine of your love. Absolutely, babies. Got the old coyotes singing to the sunrise this morning. Once again, here we're on the Coyote Medicine Show with Grandpa Coyote. Only on the Hazy Radio Network. Your ticket to flight here in the great daylight. Your ticket to flight all the cotton picking time, babies. 'Cause you rock and I roll, and everybody else just soothes our soul and helps us get on the go, whether we know it or not. Now, you may be experiencing some irritation towards some members of this human family. Wow, son of a gun. Imagine that. How could that ever be, man? We never have any such difficulty, do we? I would say not, baby. Not ever. 'Cause we're the human of the human being, you see. That means we be real cool. And we don't get irritated by nobody. Do we, you fool? Oh, baby. Coming back to life. Finding confidence in what? In ourself. Which is what? Well, it's not exactly what we've been taught that it is now, is it? No. We're so unified with life, it is beyond belief. And therefore no one believes it. Even though many people pay it lip service, how many people live it? Goddamn few, let me tell you, man. Goddamn few, you know. Well, God bless the few. Let's say it that way, you know. I got to clean up my linguistics just a wee bit here and stay in the flow on the medicine show so you get to glow and don't get too offended, you know. Of course, these days, who cares? It's a free-for-all, man. In the language and in everything else, too, man. There are no rules anymore. Everything's out the window, and life is beginning to reflect that in a big way. Haven't you noticed? Look at how these son of a guns have been trying to foment war forever on this planet. I mean, big war. They want a huge one. They want another Atlantean-style battle where the nukes are flying, baby. There's some people that just have this bloodlust in their heart, and they can't help themselves. They're sick as sick can be. But, babies, we're here to set them free, too. You know, they're some of the most imprisoned beings. You got to have some real sympathy and maybe even feel the sorrow for these poor sons of bitches that have been, like, quote, quote, in charge here. These human beings, I mean, not the energies beyond them. But we got to have confidence. I mean, you got to have compassion for them all. You know, you got to see what's really going on there, you see. These are some of the, I mean, these are some of the emptiest lives a person could ever live. You know, this is the life of the least feeling, of no feeling, of not caring about anyone, and not allowing anyone to care about you, just being a total asshole. The kind of shit most people take out and shoot or hang at the first chance they get. Well, of course, I was speaking in Old West ways again. I can't get that Old West shit out of my blood. I was raised in Utah. It's not so much. Well, it is Old West there. God, you wouldn't believe what went on in that place. There's a little bit of that history in this book I've written called The Atomic Bomb. B-U-M, like, you know, your backside, the thing you sit on, or like a hobo that comes to your door, because they're often called bums. Well, I know that doesn't happen now, but it used to when I was a kid. And I've done my share of hoboing in my time. You know, I connected with those people when I was just a little pup of 5 years old, maybe even a little younger than that. We lived by some railroad tracks, you see. We had a big old farmstead where, you know, was our feedlot, our big shop to work on equipment with, our coal yard, our granaries, you know, the orchards, the pastures, you know, home base, baby, where we parked all the equipment and stuff like that. See, I came from a real agricultural family, man. We had our basis in the soil of the earth, man. And so from 5 years old on, I was working it, babies. But oh well, it's a beautiful thing in its own right. But the hobos, man, wow. I would sneak away from home because my mama would have a fit if she knew I was hanging out with the hobos, because they're murderers and rapists and shit like that, in her humble opinion, you know. And they're not people to be dabbled with, But she will, if one comes to the back door and asks real humbly like, she'll tell them, go out there and pull some weeds for me. I'll fix you some dinner or some lunch or whatever, And they go do it, and she go do it, and baby, there was a meeting of the heart, meeting of the mind. The only way she could really show compassion, because her beliefs were so severe, and her disdain for these hoboing type men, just off the charts. I mean, but yet she would still, humble herself beyond her own feelings and allow them to work so that she could pay them a little bit of food. I mean, everything had to be boiled down to that commercial transaction, but that's the way it was. At least she had some way to expose her compassion. She would have exposed my backside to a belt or a willow from the old whipping tree if she ever caught me down there at the hobo camp. But I would do it. I was pretty sneaky. I'd go out, like I was doing my chores, take my milk bucket with me or whatever. You know what I mean? And then when nobody was looking, I'd head off down the ditch line. And in fact, if the ditch didn't have water in it, that was a good place to run on down, and nobody could see us, and nobody would know you was heading for the hobo camp. Then you just had to get over the bank without anybody seeing you. Then you were safe, because the railroad was set down in just a wee bit, and then the hobo camp was on the other side of it in some trees beside a beautiful bubbling spring that just came right up out of the ground, some of the sweetest water you ever drank. Ah! We were so blessed in that area, we didn't realize how blessed we were. But these guys gave me a seasoning. They taught me about life and gave me dreams that I could never fulfill, that got me, just activated the wanderlust in me, something awful, So it wasn't long before I became a journeyer and traveler, and have been most of my life, one form or another. I did 3 million miles of long-haul trucking, but I did a lot in between too, man. I've done some amazing things in my time. I've lived a really diverse life. Many new starts, many new beginnings in this life. Yet I look at it now and I see the flow of it as all contributing to what I'm becoming now. As all of it, every bit of it necessary to bring me to this state of being, this state of awareness, this state of consciousness that I'm beginning to understand and accept within myself now. It's a beautiful thing. How many of you have felt the moon out there? Well, babies, I used to feel that moon, just like the tides, man. It wanted to pull me out of that place and get me moving when I was just a tiny kid, So my cousin wrecked a little car we had one time. Didn't hurt it really, but we thought it was. And it was our play car, so it wasn't like he's out on the streets doing something. We were back in the cow pasture, and he got the damn thing stuck in the ditch. He slipped somehow and got the damn thing stuck in the ditch. Now, my cousin was about, 11? Yeah. So, he's kind of a strapping tall 11, too. He's almost 6 feet already, 5'8" or something like that. He's like, this guy was growing like a weed, going to be a gorilla, man. For real. Talk about the sunshine of your love. There was one sunshine that was really going to blossom in a big way. So anyway, he and I determined that the old man's going to whip our asses, which of course he's going to, the minute he finds out about it. So we just pack our little bags and sneak off and run up the road and go up to the highway. It's dark now, about 7 in the evening, winter time or something like that. Stick out our thumbs, and who's the first car to come along? I mean, just imagine, what's my kind of luck? Of course, it's a county sheriff or a local deputy or something like that. It was one of those cops anyway, man. So they pick my 5-year-old ass up and my 11-year-old cousin's ass up and take us to the cop shop. What you boys doing out there hitchhiking on the highway? Blah, 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 blah. Of course, the whole story comes out. And then they look at me. Well, they're calling our parents and, getting me squared away. They're looking at us saying, listen, boys, you ever do that again, we're going to put you over in that jailhouse across the street. Boy, that was a cold, slimy place. I could see it from the park. It was in the middle of the city park, and there really were people in there. I felt so sorry for them. It was cold and damp. But anyway, they were threatening to throw me in to that jailhouse if I ever tried to run away from home again. I was like, oh, shit. I'm looking at him. I didn't say it because I knew better. I didn't want to get beat up or nothing. But I was looking at him and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, you guys, you're going to lock up a 5-year-old with a bunch of hardened criminals? I think not, These were the days before they had things like a juvie hall. Though it wasn't too long after that They built one there between Springville and Provo over there in Utah where I grew up, you know. I think they built it just to contain me. Because they noticed I was starting to act up. And they said, ooh, we're going to have some containment for this rascal. And you know what they did? Oh, geez. I spent, like, what was it? Let's say, between the ages of 11 or so and 16, I spent a good share of my time in that juvie hall just hanging out, trying to be something real. You know, boy, you talk about a hard thing to do when you're a kid. Try living in a 4x8 cubicle, man. At least it had a window. At least we had some air. I could even open the window and get air, you know. So it wasn't all bad. And they had a weight room. You could go lift weights. And once in a while, they'd let us watch TV and, you know, things like that. But, ooh, cigarettes were a big prohibition there. Had to be real sneaky. My buddies would sneak up from the outside and slip in through a little hole we made in the screen. Tiny little thing. Looked like a fly did it. But we could get a cigarette and a match through it. And that's what counted. Then I'd hide those little rascals in most creative ways. Because they'd search us all the time. Looking for cigarettes and other contraband. You know, we didn't know much about marijuana back then. But still, Utah was kind of like 10 years behind everybody else, at least, you know. But, oh well, because we were so isolated, you know. And that's probably what drove my soul out more than anything, because I did feel isolated there. Not just from society, but from life, you know, because I just couldn't agree with it. I couldn't go along with what, I mean, I loved everybody I knew, etc. But I just couldn't be. That's why I had so much trouble, because really I was just trying to run away and have a life to myself, because I thought this was damn ridiculous and I didn't want to live it. And you know what? Colorado was at the top of my list when I was a kid running away. And babies back in those days, they'd lock you up for shit like that, you know. They would. They'd put you on probation, treat you like shit. Of course, I can't say I didn't commit a theft or two and get caught at that too, see. I was testing the limits. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I just knew what they were telling me was total bullshit. And I knew I had to, you know, craftily find my way through life, and that was one aspect I tried when I was a kid. Well, I found out better, but, you know, it took me a while to catch on. I didn't have any rules. I didn't have anything but what I thought might be impulsively correct in the moment, you know. And that's the way I lived as a child. Boy, you talk about a rowdy existence. No wonder they had to put me in a box. I wouldn't have wanted to be my parents. I was a trial, man. But out of these trials comes liberation, babies. The same as our beautiful beings back there at the Kim Cafe in Kim, Colorado, the very center of the universe, man. And we've been experiencing this life of this, well, let's say Middle Eastern couple now. We can make them a couple, though I doubt they ever get married, because they're just not the kind. They don't need to. They don't need inconfident things to help them feel confident in themselves. They flow together naturally. That's what they be. They don't need a piece of paper to say that's okay. But they lived in a pretty severe day. Now in India, that was a little more acceptable than in the Middle East where they lived. Oh my God, it was like Utah in my younger days, you know. You couldn't do a damn thing without that religion had something to say about it. Well, that's exactly how it was in those days in that little Middle Eastern country they come from. It was run by a bunch of Zionist dinks that didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground. Remind you of today? Well, let's talk about that some other time. But, you know, it's along the same lines now, ain't it, baby? A lot of things don't change too much, you know. The facade changes, the people change, the technology changes, you know, consciousness grows. But, babies, it's amazing how we get stuck in loops and stay there, isn't it, you know? And you can look at these times and those Roman times back in those days, you know, and you can see a whole lot of similarities, a whole lot of amazing synchronicities. If you're really conscious, if you really look, you know, you'll see that life and this life, it really hasn't changed that much. We've actually gotten, though we're been in through darker times, we've actually gotten a little more civilized. We don't stone people for screwing around anymore. We get them stoned so they can screw around and then find out what life is all about, you know, and become confident in themselves by totally losing their confidence and screwing up and getting in screwy relationships that take you to hell and back, you know. You can't divorce this person quick enough, and when you got together, you couldn't love them quick enough, you know what I mean, or long enough, etc., you know. It's amazing how this life stretches you, how beautiful it can be. But it's also beautiful to see that we have people in this life that have lived it much differently, that have put together an energy, a little ball of flame, let's call it a love flame, that's burning to this day, that stayed ignited in everyone's heart across the face of this earth, and that now is blossoming into the great warmth of love that recreates all of our society by recreating us from one at a time from inside of ourselves. You know, as we recreate ourselves, as we reconceive of ourselves and come to see of ourselves as the enlightened ones that we are, then we've joined the tribe. We're in the vibe. We let go of all this bullshit. And that's the very state we're in right now on this December, whatever it is, 10th of 2014. 3 days ago was my birthday. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. I'm forever free. So I don't give a shit about a birthday. That's why I don't advertise them, you know. I don't want people plastering shit all over my page, you know. I like it. I put up one little mention of it the day after, and you know, about 30 people down there underneath it in the comments wish me happy birthday, and that was beautiful. That's how it ought to be, you know. I don't like to make a big deal out of anything. I make a big deal out of everything. Everything is love. Everything's emotion. I love my birthday. I just don't like the way, just like Christmas. I love Christmas. I love the solstice. I love New Year's. I just don't like the way people have treated these days. You know what I mean? But big deal. Because there's love in it, because there is moments of sweetness that arise and so forth, I embrace these holidays with a passion. I really do. You know, and it doesn't mean I'm going to go out and buy a bunch of crap and give it away and stuff like that. No, I can't even do that anyway. I'm on a fixed income, babies. I'm fixed. More ways than one. Oh, my God. Salute, dears. Ah, that is a sensual cup of coffee. That's a mug with a drug, man, a really good drug. It's called coffee, baby. It's with AAAWWW like that, you know. That's how I spell it. Coffee, man. That's the real shit. I ain't got the gritty French roast this time. I got the, like, what is that? That's rainforest. Yeah, it's the Guatemalan kind of stuff. That's pretty tasty coffee, but it's a little lighter flavored than the darker roast, you know. I like them both, you know. Sometimes I'm in the mood for one, sometimes I'm in the mood for the other. But because I drink so damn much coffee, you know, a couple pots a day, well, and sometimes 3, well, then I like the little bit lighter flavored and a little low acid, because then I can live with them. Low caffeinated too, because I don't need much caffeine in my life, so I sure seem to thrive on it. Well, babies, rolling with that flow today. Got that heart of going here on the Coyote Medicine Show, only on the Hazy Radio Network. And if you want your own official coffee mug, Coyote Club mug, get on over to thecoyoteclub.com. TheKoyoteKlub, Coyote with a K, Club with a K.com, and get over to the mug shop there. Well, you can order off the homepage too, but get over to the mug shop to see what else we got. We got some good shit there, man. I'll be improving that site this week as time goes on. Wow, I'm a little buried because I've got to rebuild a damn computer, you know. From the bottom up. Well, it's not a damn computer. It's a blessed computer, and it's really served me well. It's a great little horse, but oh, it's tricky. And I let it get invaded by some kind of treacherous virus. Pretty much screwed me up, so I had to start all over again. Ground zero, here we come, you know. And I had a system image saved, but I'm not able to recover it. So I got to reinstall everything. That's how I got back on the air this morning. I had to reinstall this one and configure it and blah, blah, blah. Where you going? That and a few others. I'll be busy on this thing for 2 weeks probably, just getting this and that put together. And you just have to do it at a piece at a time, because you got to maintain your project level at the same time. You got to keep your output going. You got to be able to do the radio show, got to do your YouTubes, you know, etc., man. And then stay in the flow in the household. Oh my God. I need a house cleaner, Crestone. If there's anybody here's got a kid that needs to make a few extra bucks, so I ain't got a lot though, but I'll help you out, you know, as well as I can. I'd be fair about it. I need some house cleaning, man, and it's not, there's some here I just can't do, you know. I don't mind cleaning toilets. I don't mind washing dishes. I mean, and I do it every now and then, whether I need to or not. You understand what I mean? Them old hobos conveyed a whole lot more to me than just a wanderlust. It was a lifestyle. And I still live it in a kind of a confident sort of way, you know. I mean, I allow myself to have housing. I allow myself to have food and nice clothes and shit like that, because I think that's part of making yourself real, is treating yourself right. So I allow myself. You wouldn't believe. Here I am cooking for one all the time here, you know. And you wouldn't believe some of the dishes I come up. I mean, you know, I'm an old chef too. I've run a couple of restaurants in my time. I've run resorts, and then I've been a dinner house chef. I've been a campfire chef. I've been a barbecue dude. I have fed the masses and the multitudes at community dinners and so forth like that in my lifetime. I've done a lot of cooking in my time. I was always fascinated from the time I was tiny with the aspects of food and making it taste better, you know. Well, gosh, when I was a kid, I didn't realize how spoiled we were on that old farm. Everything came right from the ground around us. Everything we ate, we grew pretty much. We bought some things like flour and stuff, but mostly we just ate our own produce, man. We had great big old freezers for it. We always had cows butchered and so forth. And we had tons of vegetables and fruits, and it was all organic pretty much. Though we were into the chemistry of life too. We, you know, better living through chemistry, you know. Oh God, did we ever swallow that one? You know, and I look at it these days, and I'm blessed that we all lived to tell about it, and that people survived those times. But it was, oh, the food was so great. Man, just as raw and as natural as you'd ever want it to be, man. It's just perfect, you know what I mean? It's just perfect. Just, it was the stuff, man, you know. But we, you know, when you're there living it, you get it every day, every meal. You don't think too much about it. Then you start to travel and you discover that a lot of people are eating food out of boxes and cans and awful things like that, and they don't know about flavors and nuances and, you know, the more elemental aspects of food, you know. So I began a gigantic exploration in my life of food. I worked in the food industry for years. I've had a couple of businesses in the food industry. I had an amazing little cookie company back in, I think it was in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. I had this amazing little cookie company that sold these big giant cookies to the convenience stores all over the West here. I mean, I've done so many things with this food. But I always had this thing from the time I was tiny. You know, as I began to get away from home and realized how good we had it, I determined that I would always use the finest ingredients possible in everything that I made. And that I would get, you know, the far out spices and so forth that enhance the flavors of food and learn how to use them creatively. And baby, I became one hell of a chef, you know, in my own country way, my own hobo way. See, us hobos, we have an attitude, you know. But the biggest part of it is gratitude. That's another thing I learned from those guys down at that old hobo camp. They didn't have a pot to piss in, you know. They would drink coffee out of tin cans, you know, etc. Boiling beans for dinner, stuff like that. I mean, you know, they had to make do with what they had. But these guys not only were confident, some were depressed, but they were still confident. I don't know how to explain it. They knew life was cool. And they were happy to be in it, living it. I think the freedom aspects of it really turned them on and made them into decent gentlemen when you'd allow it. Now, around others, who knows what they would have been like. But, you know, I was an enlightened little kid. I was a bright little, well, I won't say the word, but I was. And little blue-eyed, blonde-haired kid, you know, and kind of toe-headed, you know, had a little cowlick, of course. Terminally cute as a little boy. Well, of course these guys couldn't do anything but, you know, love me and tell me their stories and tales and stuff. God, we had some great times down there. I'm amazed I got away with it. Like I said, if my mom ever would have caught me, oh my God, the cops probably would have raided the damn hobo camp and run these guys out of town, never let them come back, you know. Besides my beating. See, that's why I had to be careful. And I was conscious of that aspect of it too, of my mother's, especially my mother's brutal, harsh attitude against the hobos. You know, she hated them, yet she loved them. It was the strangest thing, man. But boo, you didn't want to get her talking about that. They're all criminals and thieves, every jack last one. I mean, you know, they may well be. Who knows? They're just gentlemen passing through as far as I was concerned. And I met all kinds of them there, man. I even met some black people there. I didn't know what black people were, man. I mean, I kind of knew because you'd see it around you on TV. Well, no, we didn't have TV. What was it? The porters on the train and so forth. Yeah, and I think there was one black family living in our town, though. I think they stayed indoors all the time. Nobody ever saw them. So I kind of got exposed to the different cultures and tribes of this world hanging out with these hobos. I did it for years, man. And until like into the 60s, and then things started to wane a bit. I became the hobo in the 60s. That's when I started hitting my teenage years, and I was determined that that was a good way to at least to get started in life. I could see that, bumming around door to door looking for work, not looking for a handout, but looking for work, would often lead to some incredible opportunities. And had I not been a runaway, wow, I had like maybe 6 really good starts in this life. So, where people really would have taken me under their wing and helped me get a good start and in a great occupation, etc. That's how Colorado was to me every time I came here. I started coming here pretty much full time when I was 13, but of course, sooner or later I'd get busted and taken back home, because back then it was a big crime what I was doing. Leaving home was not allowable, especially in Utah when you belong to a family with, well, hell, a fairly prominent name. You know what I mean? And a position in the community, in the church, and all. Some of my relatives were general authorities, etc., whatever the fuck that is. So it was an amazing way of being and a real structured life that, I couldn't take. So these hobos they were showing me, and they're the ones that got me moving in this direction. They never told me about Colorado too much. Most of them in Colorado going to pass through relatively quickly because it's cold in these mountains, and it's not easy for a person living outdoors, but a lot of them stayed, a lot of them found lives, This was what it was mostly when I was a kid, early 50s. Now, a lot of these guys were vets from the war that just hadn't quite settled down. Many of them were those that had come from a bad relationship of one sort or another. Back in those days, it was pretty much frowned on to divorce in this country, though it was happening. But it was like, wow, you were a social outcast if you were one of those, especially in Utah. Again, it's very structured there, very narrow-minded. It's a very narrow little path you got to be on. If you're not on that, you ain't shit. And it was amazing to my family, my parents most especially, that I could diverge from all of that completely, that I really, as time went on, just got more and more away from it and not into it. It just blew them away, man. They couldn't believe that I couldn't just follow the path and take it easy like everybody else would. But I couldn't do it. It was beyond my comprehension, especially after my exposure to the outside world through these personal little human hobos. The atomic bomb is a product of those beings back in those days, those early 50s, who began my adventure in this life by exposing me to different aspects that I hadn't seen at all. I was thinking all life was like what I was seeing around me, and I was pretty depressed about it. I thought this world really needed to blow up and just go away, burn up, be done with, These guys gave me a little confidence. These guys helped me rise up in myself a little bit to understand that my leanings weren't incorrect, though I felt guilty as hell about them because they were contrary to everything my parents ever held dear to themselves, Their church was the first thing in their lives. Kids were second. Work was third, etc. They had it all figured out. Everything was wired out. Of course, we didn't always live it that way because that's the bullshit, But yet, that's what they're expected to be. There's a very narrow little confine. This is the way you're going to be in this reality, and this is what you're going to be. They had it all figured out. They'd plant me in Salt Lake City sooner or later and make me one of their leaders of one sort or another. I mean, that was, ordained on me when I was a tiny little kid. I was like, oh, shit. I met a couple of those cadavers when I was about that age, too. Some of the big guys in Salt Lake City that run the church, I met some of those guys, and they were cold as ice, man. They looked like they'd just come out of a deep freeze, man, and they were old and wrinkled. I mean, they had no life. They were like, you look at their eyes, and there was nothing there. It was just dark, It's like, what the hell? And this is a prophet? That ain't no prophet. That's a loss, man. Of course, you can't expose yourself to even that kind of thinking. You keep that pretty subconscious. You know, but then you're on the surface level, you're just really uncomfortable with it. You just don't know why, but you're really uncomfortable with it. You know this ain't right. As a little tiny child, in your innocent eyes, you can see through all of this. But you know, because it's your parents' world, the one you're born into, and you know it would shatter them if you shattered the reality. Well, you kind of try to go along, you know, you do your best you can to try and fit in, but oh shit, every time I did, it backfired on me. I get thrown back on my ass so fast, you know what I mean? Don't do this, Mr. Coyote. The angel was saying kind of quietly in the background somewhere, but boy, I was getting the message. You can't go along with this stuff. You got to be real for a while. That's going to make you crazy, but you got to be real for a while. And guess what? That's what I did, and I got through it somehow. And I came out of it unscathed on the other end. I'm like Mr. Magoo, man. I go around creating all kinds of disasters in my life, and somehow and incredibly it all works out, and in the end nobody's hurt and everybody's happy, you know. That's what happened to my juvenile years. All that time I spent dealing with the juvenile authorities and stuff just went away in a heartbeat. I mean, I couldn't have planned it better myself if I'd have tried, and I didn't plan it. It just happened. And all of that went away, and I managed to find a free life. Well, I didn't stay free for long. Went and got myself married when I was 18. But when I was 17, I finally got to go where I wanted to go and be who I wanted to be and bum around, man. I wound up going up into Wyoming, having an adventure with some friends of mine. We wound up working at Jenny Bay of all places, or Jenny Lake. Yeah, Jenny Lake, Coulter Bay and Jenny Lake up there in the Grand Teton National Park. You talk about a knockout gorgeous place. Oh my God. And there were young ladies there that were hip, you know, I mean, gosh, it was just fun. You know, and I mean, little by little, I kind of began to meld into life. Boy, I tell you, I was really scattered, broken and scattered, and, you know, I couldn't hardly sleep at all. I'd have to take Salmonex to try and go to sleep, and that would make me a little drowsy, about 15 minutes. And if I didn't go to sleep in that 15 minutes, I'd be awake all night. And I wasn't drinking that much coffee or nothing. I just couldn't sleep. It was weird because inside I was so emotionally upset from all that I'd been through. And the outside could hardly believe that it was finally living the life that it wanted to live. And then it was finding that this life wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. That some things weren't as much fun as they were portrayed. I mean, you know, people lied about shit. I couldn't believe it. Life was tough. Tough as nails. You know, and I was finding all that shit out, too. I couldn't believe it. I thought it'd be a little softer than that shit. Thought I knew. But then again, because I expected softness in this life, I got a lot of that too, you know. It kind of counterbalanced all the harshness I was dealing with, you know. And there was nothing like being alive and living in the Grand Tetons for a moment in your life, especially in your young days. Oh my God, talk about anchor you in this reality. There's where you begin to know there's real magic here. That's why places like our brothers hanging out there in the Himalayas back there 2,000-3,000 years ago, same way. It's the same kind of territory. It's very high energy. It's very high vibe. And people love being in that high vibe because it makes them a little more consciously present of what's real. Brings them closer to nature and God and all that shit, you know. It's rock and roll, man. And it really does soothe your soul. There's nothing like sticking your little toesies in a mountain lake like that. Cold as ice, man. Oh my God, refreshing. Even better if you're brave enough and your old body can take it to dive in head first into those cold, icy waters. Oh my God. It's like a baptism into a new life and also the freezing of every part you ever dreamed of having. Oh, but it's refreshing, man. Especially if you can get out and get in the sunny rocks right after that. You know? These were the habits I began back in my younger days like that, you see. But it's like that in this life. Out of the darkest things, a narrow and strictured and unconscious society, comes the brightest of things. The blossoming and the awakening of the good old atomic bum, B-U-M, the hobo of your heart, man. The hobo that's come to set you free. Yes, indeedy, that's who I be. I am that mother trucking hobo, and I've been a trucker too, man. 3 million miles. See? I've done everything in this life. I've gone beyond the limits. I've lived it crazily, yes. Some would say haphazardly, yes. Difficult to the extreme, yes. But finding my way through it all and coming back to life when I was 40-something. I mean, really coming back to life. But learning of my magic long before that, you know, holding that all the way through all these severe trials, you know. Oh, my life was so threatened when I was a child. I mean, by the time I reached 18, I could hardly believe it. I blessed that day. Then I went out with a 22 to blow my head up because I was done. I just couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? Death had been to me so many times, I thought, well, what the hell? You know, I was pretty depressed at the time for some reason or another. I was just stepping out there. Went up on the mountain and got my 22 out. And I was going to do it. You know, I was done. You know, thank goodness I didn't, of course. You know, but all I could do was think about shooting myself in the foot. And I didn't even have nerve enough to do that because I knew that'd be permanent. I didn't want to, you know, be a limp all my life, you know. Finally, you know, I guess some angels came to me and kind of took me in their heart because that's what happens when you're up in the mountains, you know. It's very similar to what happened to my sister some 30 years later, 40 years later. I don't know when it was, but, you know, back about 15 years ago, one of my sisters was depressed and living in Colorado, went up on the mountain, took about 30 tranquilizers and laid down, got ready to die, you know. Well, guess what? They didn't die yet. She laid there for 12 hours, then decided she didn't really want to die, got up and got in her car and drove to the hospital, and they pumped them right out. They hadn't digested. Amazing, huh? Phew. Life is crazy like that. But that was my moment. You know, that was probably one of the most trying moments in my life right there when it just all kind of came down to that one essential choice. And boy, I realized then there was no way I could ever do such a thing. I think that's the last time I really ever had, you know, I can't say I've never had suicidal thoughts after that. I did for off and on for years. Of course, when life hits you hard, man, sometimes you just want to set yourself free. But I never actually gave it any serious consideration after that. That was my moment. I think that's when I really, you know, death had visited me, 100, 150 times. I mean, who can count the numbers? Now, when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about close calls, not dying and going out of the body. But I have been dead twice. I had been out of the body twice. I drowned once at 7 and was revived with the resuscitator and stuff. And then when I was 13, I took a fall out of a truck going 40 miles an hour down a highway and lit on my head on that highway. And I should have been dead, guys. I mean, that's severe. I should have been dead. I wasn't. I was concussionated, and they, you know, rushed me to the hospital, all that stuff. But I was out of my body for a while, and that's when I realized the presence of Mother Mary. Now, I'm not a Catholic, and I'm not a religious person whatsoever, especially back then. I was trying to get away from it, you know. But I did. This Mother Mary came and hung out with me and helped me get through those trying moments when, you know, my life was threatened like that. And actually, you know, as I went to the realm out of my body, she brought me back. She was the escort that brought me back to my body. And I think that her person was in this one nurse that was there too, because those few days I spent in this hospital, this one nurse, who was the one that was there when I came back to life, this one nurse really took a liking to me. And she would come to me in the wee hours of the morning, like 2 o'clock or so, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she would sit beside my bed, and we would talk. You know, and I could talk with her for real, and we would talk about real things in life and the challenges I was facing and things like that. And she always had the wisest advice. And baby, I was so in love, not in a inebriated sort of way, but I was so in love with this person, you know. And as they're wheeling me out of the hospital, I did recover rather rapidly. The angels were really with me, babies, and then some. Whew. But as I was rolling out of the hospital, you know, of course, I want to thank this lady. I want to see her. I want to get her frickin' phone number, but that's not going to happen. Oh, no, we don't have anybody by that description working here. Well, hell, she'd been alongside of them, right alongside of them, as things were going down. I mean, they were all working it together, but nobody knew this lady. She didn't match the description of anybody that was employed in this hospital. And I'm like, wow, well, okay, it must have been an angel then, huh? That's when I didn't even know to believe in angels, but of course I did, but not really. I was kind of tending toward the atheistic tendencies in those days because of the crap I'd been through in the name of God. I thought God was a pretty awful person to be doing shit like that to people. Crazy thinking, this old atomic bomb. But listen, if you don't have, and I could do a much more thorough job of it now, I apologize for what's in my book and the nature. I mean, it's beautiful and it's well written. It's a great story. So when I say I apologize, is it could have gone to a lot deeper level yet. I tell friends, the Atomic Bomb, my little book, is just the tip of the iceberg, and they roll their eyes. But it's true. I could have written it much deeper these days, because I'm much more alive now than I was, 12, 13 years ago when I first wrote that. You know what I mean? I was pretty alive then too, but oh my God, compared to now, I barely was a glimmer. And I was pretty spectacular back then too. I impressed people with stuff, When I say I'm not being overconfident. I'm just expressing my genuine joy at being able to be the magic man that I've been, and then to be able to help people as much as I've been able to help, which really helps myself. Do that's the funniest thing I've noticed about being in this so-called industry. Let's call it that, the spirit industry. Many people treat it that way. Everybody that came to me as I became, a practitioner of healing on the streets, everybody that came to me were dealing with similar issues to mine. But they wouldn't tell me that. I would just take their hands in mine and sit there and close my eyes and go into their life and, get directed around by the angels and just talk about it and just explain it. But it's funny. Every time I did that, they would transform. I would transform. We got in this union, this spiritual union. It's like we were one life. Whoever it was, it didn't matter. I could do this. I still have this ability to engage in that way. I practice it much differently, but I'm sure you notice it here on the Coyote Medicine Show, only on the Wayyy Radio Network. I'm sure you see it. I'm sure you get it right. Yeah, in the middle of flight, not night, flight, babies, because our heart is getting light and we're taking off, babies. We're nothing but love. See, and I tell you my stories so you can understand the conscious presence in your story. And you can see the similarities just like I did when I sat down with these people and began to deal with their lives and my life too. Because it was the same energy, the same kind of energy. We were dealing with the same difficulties at the same time, in the same place, and moving in the same direction. And the more I practiced that kind of one-on-one stuff, the more I solved that. It was incredible. And of course, because I'm openly gifted, because I allow my gifts to be, well, I can look at you walking down the sidewalk and know everything about you, everything. But you know what? I'm not so invasive as to do that. I respect people's privacy in this world too. But if I hear their heart calling to me, baby, I'm going to send you some good energy. If I feel your misery and your pain and I know you want out, I know genuinely so that your intentions are, I know, like I said, I can read it. I feel it. It's not like a story. It's not like I know all the details, but I feel every bit of it. So I know where you've been and what's happened, and I can help you deal with it. That's what I do here on the Coyote Medicine Show as the vehicle, the vessel of love, the oracle of life. Those who can reflect life back to you in ways that you can see it as real inside of you. We're reflective this way. So was our old buddy back there, that story we're experiencing at the Kim Cafe. That dude, same way. He could see right through you. He knew everything. Same with she. Amazing beings. We'll have a lot more of their tale tomorrow, man. Getting another segment or two going here. Keep them in the flow. Babies, it's all good medicine when it's rock and roll. Here on the Coyote Medicine Show, only on the Wayyy Radio Network, baby. Oh, I hope you're loving that. I certainly am. Welcome back, babies, to the reality of your ever-loving mother trucking heart. Yee-haw, and then some. Here on what? The Wayyy Radio Network, Radio Network. Oh, we love this place. And we love you, baby, through and through. Now, come on, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Let's get this thing going on. What's going on here, baby? There we are. They're running slow this morning. I'm going to have to jack these guys up, Rock and roll with Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young on the Coyote Medicine Show.
Got out of town